There we go. Hopefully that fixes things. I actually don't know if it has or not because something happened and all my settings got changed. What if I pump that up just a little bit? Okay, I hope the audio sounds all right. I can't tell. I can't tell because why? I don't have headphones listening to the stream. I wonder if that would help. Maybe I should do that. Anyway, hi, welcome back to the Practical Microservices stream where I am giving up. Not really. Over the past couple of streams, we were trying to get Rails integrated with Eventide. I'm not giving up on that. We were just blocked on how to do tests because I really don't like Rails's testing methodology. Let me get up on my soapbox here. You see, the way that you test controllers is just so strange to me. There are these inscrutable things that you can't construct. You can't call methods on them. You can, because that's what the other tests are doing under the hood. But the setup for that is awful. And that is one of the real things that test-driven development gives you. It's the design exercise. And if your code is hard to test, one of the things you'll find is that if your code is hard to test, it's probably also difficult to use. And so with just how much is required to test something in Rails, I would like to think that would have been a signal that maybe we're going down the wrong approach here, but whatever, it's what it is. And so we are going to just accept that we are going to write to the database when we do stuff with Rails, which means that we will be writing to the message store, and then we'll just use queries to figure out what's in there. And we will be writing to the view data database, but we're going to have to make sure that we use random identifiers because we don't have permissions to destroy the message store. So we're not going to do that. And there, this old man is done with his rant. Let's just accept and move on. So switching back here. Well, actually, wait a second. Still need to switch the scene here. But I just want to, close a whole bunch of things here that I had open. Like messages can go. The app store won't go. That's strange. All right. Anyway, here this practicalmicroservices.com is quickly becoming the best place on the internet to go for all your questions. Last week, we talked a lot about idempotence. So we had a whole week of it almost. There was a little snafu here because of publishing dates when you use Hugo to publish a static website. But we conclude, I can hear you and music is low. Hey, SB Ditto, sorry, I didn't see you were there because I didn't have the Twitch screen open. Yeah, I was having audio issues. So my audio setup is, I can't pull it into view here, whatever. I've got something called the Elgato Wave XLR, and it takes your XLR microphone, you plug it into that's the audio interface, and then it presents as a USB mic to your machine. But to run it, you have to run the Elgato Wavelink software, which is actually, it's good software. I'm not saying it's bad, but either it updated or OBS updated. And every time that happens in OBS, you have your audio sources and you say, this is audio, like put this in as a source of audio for the scene, and on the machine it comes from this audio source. And so every now and then that just resets to the system default instead of remaining on the specific audio sources that the Wave XLR presents to the machine. Anyway, yeah, that's fun little tech talk. But hey, got some more wonderful stuff on idempotence up last week, so be sure to check out practicalmicroservices.com for all your microservices related questions. Last week was super technical there, and the week before was more like general how to organize the work kind of things. And it's funny how much talking about how to organize the work gets more engagement. I also post things on LinkedIn, and there's way more, I don't know, reactions and likes or what have you. When talking about like problems with Agile or project management kind of stuff versus like, here are technical answers to questions. I suppose some of that is there aren't a ton of people doing projects with Eventide. Like, it's not the most widely used framework. That's part of the reason I'm doing the stream, because I think it's a very good framework and the practices it promotes are very good ones. Rails testing methodologies. And so, I don't know, whatever. Maybe in 5 years, when Eventide is dominating the landscape, people will be like, wow, I read about this first on Practical Microservices Daily. So, anyway, let us move on, shall we? So back to our test. Let's load it up. And I don't know if you got here, SB Ditto, when I announced I was giving up on the test. I think, yes, it's right here. We've got this register test, and I wanted to use, so what the register test, its job is to put a register command into the message store so that the identity component can pick it up. And I really wanted to do that somehow using the right substitute, but I don't see how to do it in a sensible way. So I'm giving up on it. We are just going to write to the message store, basically right here. So this line is going to have to go away. And I think this is the one that we will end up using. Right, this registry thing. I was trying to figure out, like, if we had some class that we could ask for an instance of the register helper that the identity client provides, then when we load up, we could have an initializer that's like, oh, if you're in test, do fake objects, and if you're in real, not fake objects, but inert ones, if you will, that would use the substitute. And if you're not in test, if you're in development or production, actually be operational. But I don't know, I wasn't really liking the way that was going. And then I did ask in the Eventide Slack community, hey, how do people do this? And the answer was just kind of accept what Rails is. It made certain choices, and those choices are going to impact a lot of things. We'll do what we can to shield ourselves from the suboptimal, in my opinion, decisions that Rails made, but sometimes it isn't worth the fight. And I don't think it would make for very interesting streams for like the next 2 weeks to be like, let's figure out how to actually get this going. I do want to figure that out. I'm not like completely giving up on the idea. I just want to move forward with getting the port in place, because once the port's in place, then we can like correct design mistakes I made with video tutorials and other things. So anyway, so I'm going to comment out this line as well. This one's just going away because I'm not even pursuing that. But in our test here, this is the test. So, right, we can't do this part anymore. That part goes away as well. These all had to do with how I was trying to get the substitute working with some registry. And that was also creating a really unfortunate, like, the word register appearing in so many places. I didn't enjoy that. Anyway, so what does this test do? It gets the register path and asserts that that was successful and then posts to it. I do actually want to get the path because I would expect that the response would have a an identifier in it. Is that right? No. The get path can do that. I don't think we have to actually get the register path for posting to it to work. And then we can just use our own control here for the identifier. And here we have, this doesn't fly as an email. So that's a different test that we want. We want to make sure that we're actually validating what we get and we don't put in an email address that is not an email address. So in this register users directory here in the integration, it seems that for actually posting to register, we're going to have different scenarios to capture. And I think that is the point that I was going to make another folder for this. So let's go ahead and do that. And so we want to move you to register users. I'm just going to call it register. like so. Because the other scenario that we'll have here is like invalid data, or let's get specific, not an email and underscore test.rb. So that's the other one that we'd want to have in there. Right, and the password would need to be of sufficient length as well. No, we'll have a test for it because that is tested in video tutorials. So let's add another here, password to short test.rb. So those are the scenarios that we're going to check here. So great, let's go back to this. So we're going to post with this data here. Don't really care much about it. That's fine. And I think then over in our create action, we could just put a puts params.inspect and see that the data that we're passing in the test is actually making it to there. So let's run that. So that would be not rake. It is rake under the hood, but some number of years ago, Rails stopped invoking rake directly and started invoking Rails directly. So Rails test integration. That didn't work. What didn't work here? So, oh, right. Yeah. My databases aren't running because I rebooted my machine. How exciting is that? Let me check the Docker Compose in here. So we've got the view data database and the main server and then message DB as well. So yeah, we can just run that Docker Compose just in case there are any lingering databases sitting around. Oh boy, Docker's not running because I rebooted. You'd think I'd remember to do both of those things, but I don't. Because I like to pull them in. That's what it is. It's intentional. I don't start Docker until there's something telling me I need to have it started. So great, close you. What is this? Is that checking? How likely are you to recommend Docker Desktop to another developer? I don't know how to compose the many factors that go into that decision into a single number here on the stream. So I'm going to take the coward's approach and just punt that. So let's go ahead and run our container here. Containers, there's more than one, and run this test. And oh, you have to actually create the databases first. That doesn't sound right. How quaint. All right, cool. What do we get? Uninitialized constant, register users, tests, register test identity. That would be because we're trying to use... no, it's right here. This thing doesn't exist. So does that mean I'm not pulling the gem in? Probably what it means. I'm not. Look at that. So we're grabbing the user credential schema client, but not the identity client. So I think that would just be identity component. There we go. And why do I think it's just identity? If we go to the identity component, oh my goodness, I'm trying to fiddle with the tmux windows and it's not going well. Anyway, so we call it identity client here. Oh, that's neat. That's the actual wanted this one. No, it should be. So I'm a little hazy with Ruby gems and pathing. When do you use the name of the file? I guess the gem is identity client, so that would be the thing that we require. But then that seems to just put the gem into the require path, so the folder inside of it is called identity. So that's fun. So let's get here. Why is that one underscored? Because that's how you do it in Ruby. I think is why. Oh, right. We got a bundle install ya. Could not find it. Really? Oh, it's a dash here. Wait a second. I think I have some inconsistencies here. So in the aggregator, it's all underscored. But in this component, it is kebab cased. I am going to just do what I always do, just do what Eventai does, because I just cargo cult everything. No. I don't understand why this is dashed. And this one is not. I mean, obviously account component is the name of everything, and when we go into lib, it is dashed, but why the dash between account and client? I don't know. Maybe it's because like it's a top type modifier or something. I don't know the reasoning behind that choice, but it's what I've got there. I'll worry about making that consistent at a later time because it is standard good practice to just ignore problems. No, that's not a good idea, but that's what I'm doing. Also giving up on testing with Rails, so there we go. Neat. Okay, so we got a bunch of things installed there. That looks promising. So at some point we probably have to actually require the gem, so I'm guessing that the test will still fail because it can't find the client. Well, it did find the client. Why did it find it? Does it just like or maybe I typed it in somewhere. Oh, I pulled in this test helper. No, that wouldn't be anything. That's a Rails file. I wouldn't know about this. I don't know why it found it between namespaces. Underscore. I don't follow the comment SP Ditto. Between namespaces underscore inside of. Oh, sorry, the dash. I missed it. Dash between namespaces. Underscore inside of namespaces. I see. So, hey, look at that. That's good stuff. So, over here we have identity client. Is that why we named the gem identity client? Whereas identity component is a namespace. Okay, interesting. So, with that being the case, I probably didn't follow that correctly in the user credentials aggregator. I just wanted to ignore problems and move on. And here we are trying to correct them. So if we go to lib user credentials schema client, right? This should have been a dash. Let's. If you don't make improving the daily work, then you get lots of problems. So we are going to improve the daily work here. And I'm just going to close that because I don't want to see it. Basically is what it comes down to. This should be, what? You're different. What's wrong with you? Set. Wow. Also, pro tip. This is incorrect, but pro tip is like commit your stuff when you're done with it. Don't leave it just sitting around. So yeah, I've got some hygiene to practice here. So I call that practical microservices development because that was the actual Rails database. And I think it was last week we decided to not put the aggregation target inside of the Rails database because Rails likes to own the things that it owns. So in the settings example, did I get the example or the actual? I got the actual. And anyway, I want this one. Let's go back and see what we're actually calling that. How would I tell it? From the Docker compose. So this will make a database called viewDataDB for the aggregation target. So I'm going to grab that, come back over to the user credentials aggregator, and we will set that as the example database name. And then, well, I guess that wasn't the example file, was it? This one up here is, so let's change that. Now let's have a look at our Git status. And that line there, the session.execute set client min messages, I forget what the particular warning was that it would give. What did that have to do with? It might, no, it wasn't that one. I don't remember what it was. It might have had to do with the trust level thing that we have to put. It might have to do with that. Just one way to find out is to run it without it. I know there was a reason. I don't care to go remember what that reason was. And that's why, plug for ADRs, when you're doing this in an actual work context, you write things down so that when you forget them, you can go read them. Let's open this. Okay, so we're going to git commit database is renamed. Great, we'll push that up. Now that we have a clean state to work with in that component, let's fix my naming error. So, which one is the gem file? That is the gem. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that because I don't want it. And this is the actual client. So your name then should be that. And that should all be correct. But then furthermore, we want to rename this file. So, like so. So what do we do? I see. It processed it as a file deletion. So let's just add everything real quick and then see if it figured out. Hey, look at that. It did. It figured out it's a rename. So, and then we just change the name of the gem like so. Great. Just to make sure that's the only thing. Git commit. Let's see. Renamed gem to match. Notice a gem name matches sensible naming convention. I don't know if it has a name, but I'm calling it the sensible naming convention. Let's push that up. Come back to our application here. Now what that's going to mean is this gem needs to change like so. This is one nice thing about working with gems just path locally to your system. You don't have to actually publish this to a registry for that change to get picked up. So in theory, then we should get the same error that we had before and not introduce a new failure on the schema client. Great, that's what we got. Now then, the identity client controls namespace is not showing up, which suggests that I did something wrong here. Can you spot what it is? Oh, is it because... Oh, I was thinking maybe it was because I didn't have controls over here. My guess is this file's not getting required. So if we load up the client, haha, look at that. So we would need to make sure this file makes it into the require path. So we would say require identity client and controls, like, and actually, wait a minute. I'm sorry, I have this personal vendetta against using single quotes here. So I'm just going to take a minute to tidy up a bit. Like so. Now, which one would come first? The controls or the namespace? Probably doesn't matter. I don't think anything in... The only thing that happens to be using the tests or the controls in the identity component would be tests. Actually, I don't think anything's using them yet because we haven't actually written the identity component. I think that's right. Let's just... I hate that. Let's just run it and see what happens. I think that's genuinely correct, though. All right, what did we get here? We got a failure. So there's the put. So we are making it to the controller action. That's what I wanted to see. Something is false that we expect to be true, which is assert false. So controls use the namespace, right? Namespace first. Yeah, duh, you're right, absolutely right, because the controls are largely example messages. That's not the only thing you can put into a control, but duh. Thanks, SB Ditto. Yeah, the controls instantiate instances of the messages, so those would need to have been loaded first. I really like this setup here, so that when I take a drink, that's like straight on the camera, and you can see that. Drink lots of water; it's good for you. All right, what do we have going on here? So assert false is clearly incorrect. Okay, here's more griping from me. When I do JavaScript, I like to, when I have things, I like to organize it like this. I think that is actually invalid Ruby syntax. Wait a second. No, it is. Okay, fine. I swear I did that sometime and it was like, you can't do that. That's great. Now I can actually see each line there. So we're just going to roll with it. So this one is testing the golden path. And so what I want to put in here is just like, I don't know, at example.com. Why not? And then our password requirement is going to be 8 characters. So I'll just put 8 there. I'm not doing like numbers of special characters or anything, just needs to be long enough. Although, shouldn't these be coming from controls? Because it is the identity component's job to say what a valid email address is. I don't think that one is right. The component isn't what defines what a valid email address is. That was defined outside of this project, right? That happened slightly earlier in time than today. However, for convenience of a client, it might be nice to get an example of what an email address looks like. I want this to crash because I don't. Oh, wait a second. Is this like the 4th time I've come to the realization that the identity component does indeed have controls for these things? Yes, it is. Here's an interesting one though. So it has an example control. The identity component here has an example of a password hash. And this is an actual hash of probably ASDF. I'm not sure. But it doesn't have an example of a password. Should it? Right. And I was saying, no, it should not. I've had this discussion with myself before. I don't think it should because the identity component doesn't deal in plain text passwords. It deals in password hashes. And so, yes, I don't like just hard coding right into the test what a password should look like. If we did controls in a Rails app, would like reality collapse in on itself? Should we just try it, see what happens? So if we said this is regarding registering users, could we put a controls file or a directory in here and we'd want an example of what a password looks like? And then furthermore, if we are going to put controls in here, should we like, sorry, let me just do what I'm going to do here real quick. So we have like an ID control and it's inside the ID control that we reference it in, that we make the reference to the identity client rather than having like mixing and matching here, something like register users controls dot password dot exam. That's totally wrong. This should be, we're following the same conventions. So that's like kind of weird there to see, oh, grab a control from here and a control from there. Maybe that's not weird though, because in the components, sometimes we're using message controls, sometimes we're using whatever, but also in the components, um, it is really weird bridging these two worlds here. If we go to the ID control, notice that the ID one that we've been using is just referencing the identifier gem. That's one of the gems that event tide ships. And so we don't directly reference our identifier UUID controls in the rest of the component. We just use our own ID control. So I think that is the right thing to do, that the Rails app, if it's going to have controls, would effectively alias the ones coming from the component. So I'm going to do that. So right now, I want to change this test to... Is register users the right name for that? Identity dot example. This is actually totally the right thing to do, because we're actually going to be writing this to the message store. The previous control there, the ID one, generates the same identifier. It's do I still have it up on the screen here? Of course not. But if you remember from when I ran the test and it showed the params, that UUID was a very unlikely one, and it was a whole bunch of zeros with a 1 in a certain place, and that is just for ease of testing and controlling things. So what am I trying to say? Right, we can't have that. That works very well with the writer substitutes, where we're not actually writing to the message store. Since we're actually writing to the message store, we need to actually generate UUIDs and keep track of them. So if that's the case, then I probably in the test will actually need to pull out the like generate that beforehand and then pass it into the params here. But whatever, one thing at a time. So this should be email. This is too many lines. I'm getting a little out of practice here. So run this. It should fail, because if register users is even a module, it doesn't have a controls namespace in it. So yeah, register users isn't a thing. Now here's make it random. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So sorry, I didn't complete the thought. I was saying if we're going to use controls, even if they originate from the component, I'm going to alias them in the context of the Rails application. And so here, for this one, instead of wrapping the incrementing one, it will then wrap the underlying identity gems random generator one. So yeah, that's exactly the strategy there. And I think that supports the idea of aliasing them within the context of the application rather than referring to the lower level implementation directly, because there may be reasons why we need to switch a control away from some specific thing to something else. And by doing that rename spacing, any tests or any other thing in our project that's using the controls won't have to change as well. So we're able to limit the impact of that change. Things that change together stay together. So where am I going with this? Right. So register users isn't there. And a problem that I ran into recently at work was that in a Rails application, there is no like namespace that contains everything related to your application. So every constant that you're defining is just going straight into the global namespace, as evidenced here, class register users controller. What I mean is there's no like module my app sitting around all of this. Like so, which I wish it was, because if we go back to a component, Notice we do that. So we don't introduce a lot of names into the global namespace, which came to bite us because there was a name that the app was using that an event-tied gem also uses. And we had to be real delicate in the loading order to get that to match up. So what am I saying? I don't love the idea of polluting the global namespace. So I wonder if in lib, instead of going, like, I can't change the way Rails operates, but I have control over the choices that I make. So maybe instead of this being register users controls, maybe that should be wrapped inside of, like, I don't know, video tutorials applications or something, because that's what this is. Let's do it. I'm doing it. We're moving you to video tutorials applications, like so. And that directory can now go away. I still haven't fixed that Vim error, or when it might be a nerd tree issue. But anyway, all right. So that would mean that video tutorials applications. I think I made that plural. I did. Because there's going to be more than one application in here, which won't be monolithic because they're not going to depend on each other any more than they did in the book. So we're going to go like that. And now you should complain that there is no video tutorials applications. Good. Name error. Okay, it did say name error. That's what I was looking for. So now we can come down here to our ID. And I feel like we're achieving some sanity. Excuse me, because this is feeling less gross. Can I spell it correctly? No. Register users, module controls, module. It wouldn't be identity, it would just be ID. I think like that. No. When you write it in English, it's typically written like that. And the rules of camel casing are first letter is capital, like if it's the new word, and then all the other letters are lowercase. I think that is not the case. Yeah, in the event-tied stuff, they just do it as ID. Okay, here's where I'm going to break. Sometimes I don't do things exactly how they're done there. So I'm making that a lowercase d, and that is just the way it's going to be. So let's see here. Right, what I actually wanted to do was ID equals the identity gem. Oh boy. Which happens to correspond with the name space. Oh dear. No, it's not identity, it's identifier, isn't it? That says identity, but identifier. Phew. Okay, I'm just going to grab this real quick. Thought I was going to now be colliding with the event-tied thing there. So let's just drop that in there. We don't want the control here. I don't remember what the actual thing that we're after is, though. I think we could find it in the account components handler. Or no, because it wouldn't be generating or be in the funds transfer component. I don't think there's any generation of identifiers in any of the handlers and account component, because all the things that you'd have identifiers for, you have to come up with beforehand. But when we handle a transfer, there we go, identifier UUID random. So let's grab you real quick, put you into the system clipboard and shift back to our thingy here. Let's get rid of all that and put identifier UUID random in. That doesn't have an example method on it does it. We can figure it out by going to where that is used. No, it's identifier get. Okay, so a simple renaming here isn't going to be what we need to do. So we still need to go module ID, self.example, def self.example. Like so. There we go. Now, does the Rails autoloader pick up stuff inside of lib? Let's find out. I don't know the answer. So either we're going to get the same name error, or now it will be a name error on register users, or maybe there's, actually this is all wrong here. So this should be video tutorials, applications, register users, controls, id.example. So yes, which name error we get here tells me whether or not the autoloader picked it up. So what did we get? Expected file, blah, 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 app controllers, register users controllers to define constant, register users control. Oh, right. Because I actually saved that right there. Yeah, I wish that's how it worked, but it is not how it works. All right, now we can actually run this. So video tutorials applications is still a name error. So that would suggest that it is not actually loading that. So if we said require video tutorials application, so then we would need a controls loader, wouldn't we? So something like so. And then in here we would say require video tutorials applications controls ID, like so. And then this one would be controls. And let's get rid of these abominations right here. Okay, so I think then this is our test, and test we're saying, hey, go load the controls loader. And in the controls loader, we're saying, hey, grab the ID control, which is this file right here. And I think the load path works out so that if you require something, it'll first look in app. And if it doesn't find it there, it will go to lib. And I think Zeitwork overrides what required does somehow. So there isn't like some special require you use when you want it to be part of the rest of the ecosystem. So what did we get? Can't find video tutorials applications controls. Of course you can't, because well, actually, why couldn't you? Okay, so maybe that's not in the load path. Oh, because I have it under register users, right? So this should be register users. Also didn't work. Controls, right, because I didn't update this one either. Register users. What that does confirm, though, is that the stuff in lib makes it into the load path. Hey, so now we're getting register users controls email example doesn't exist. That is fantastic. That's where we want to be. So that means this line is working. Now let's get this one working. So this would again be video tutorials, applications, register users controls. So then over here, we would add an email one. We can open that email one, do our many levels of module namespacing here, register users, module controls, module email. Now I think this is the one where we can just say email equals identity client controls email. Did I name that correctly? Let's have a look at the identity component. And yes, the controls namespace is under the client. That's what I was wondering about. So back to the applications. Then we would, of course, have to load said file. Like so. I think that will run, and now we'll get the error on line 12. Hey, look at that. It is. Okay, great. So we're doing things in a way that doesn't produce errors. Not the kind that are easily checked by a computer anyway. So just to like see how many files we can put on the screen at one time. No, just because I don't want to retype all of that. Now this one we would have module password. And then this could just give an example of a password that's long enough using the correct kind of quote. I don't know why I got all... It's because of Rubocop. Rubocop's default say use single quotes. And I don't know, that just sounded too authoritarian to me. So I'm using double quotes. We also have to change this over here. Tutorials. Applications. And now, hang on a second. I want to put that put statement back in the controller so we can see what's passed. It's going to undo. There it is. So we're putting params inspect. Oh, that's neat. That's good. What'd we get this time? Undefined method for example on the password module. Aha, indeed. Because we did not do a self.example here. So let's add that and go like so. Hooray. Now we should get the assertion failure, but I expect to see the params being output. Hey, look at that. So there is a random UUID. There is the example email that is originating from the identity component. And here is an example password supplied only by our application. And that's a good step. So we are submitting valid data to the message store. And basically the test at this point is, did we write? We need to do what this whole flow was going to do. But now how do we get that? Oh, we need a connection to the message store that we can use to query things. And where are we going to get that session from? Is it... Oh, this is going to be garbage if it's the case. What I'm thinking is the... we would need an instance of register because it knows how to make a session to the message store. Basically, is it going to be like writer.session? And I'm sorry, not session, writer session, but session equals writer.session. I don't want that to be the case. And it wouldn't be register. No, it would be that. So we would need to get an instance of our identity client. Ooh, does it go? Not commands. That's namespaced away. So it would just be register build. So we have to, as this is written, we would have to instantiate the register client helper thingy, grab its message writer, and then grab the session out of its message writer. Surely there's a better way to get it. I suppose that, well, this is expecting, here, let's close some of these files. Single piece flow in my thoughts just is not happening. We're going to need message store settings in here. We could just instantiate a session directly in the test, or construct a session in the test to get the stuff here, to get the stuff. Isn't that's great. let's get rid of the assert false here. And so I think what we could do for a session is message store Postgres session.build. And that should look for the settings in the settings folder. So I want this to fail because it can't find that file. Settings cannot be read. It didn't find them. That's what I wanted to see. I'm so happy about that. So let's copy a few files from the identity component settings. Yeah, let's put that into settings. And let's also put it into settings as message store postgresjson.example. And that probably means that we need to echo settings star and put that into our git ignore. So now I don't want to see anything in settings in that folder. Good, it's all gone. But we do want to git add force settings message store postgres JSON example. So now that should show up at, oh my dear goodness. That should show up at, take 7. Oh, neat. I actually committed that one to the database. We'll fix that. Why doesn't the settings file show up there? Git add settings. Oh, because I was looking in the wrong place in the output there. Okay, fine. I'm slightly over time. I just want to, what do I want? I guess we'll just see if this runs now. Well, this completely won't work. I'm gonna put my assert false back right there. I want to just get to the assertion failing. If we got to there, then that means we are actually constructing the session. And where we would come back tomorrow is then querying the message store to find out if our command was written. Failure, expected false to be truthy. That's what we wanted. So quick note to self here. Build the stream name. It would be written to query to see if the message exists. Run assertions. So I guess what we're query to retrieve the message and then assert one that we got the message and that the properties on it are correct. All right. We got further. I am disappointed to not be able to use the substitute or not knowing a good way to do that right now. I really do want to figure that out because this just feels gross to me, actually writing to the message store as part of an automated test. I don't like that. And so I'm not gonna like completely give up on it, but for the purposes of advancing the stream, I am. Tomorrow we'll come back and verify that we'll get that message written. Once that's written, I think that triggers actually implementing the identity component. But what it means is that we have figured out how to write commands from a Rails app. And then once we have the identity component written, it flows. We already have the user credentials aggregator. So then that all flows back into the view data database and we have that complete cycle, which means we'll have to write our login logic. And I'm not going to bring devise in for that. We're just going to hard hand code that. But that would then give us a complete loop, which is exciting. That I'm calling it for today because now I'm just repeating myself. Hey, SB Ditto, others, thanks for coming. Catch you next time. Happy coding.